You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Welcome to Unbiased Science,
where we bring scientific method to the madness.
We're your hosts, Dr. Steier
and Dr. Sarah Scheinman.
And oh boy, we are kicking off 2025 with some chaos already. So we had an idea where we wanted to, start the new year off on something of a light note. I think a lot of us are still sort of adjusting to the new year and getting back into the swing of things. And so we're going to read the news with you and share some articles that we came across that caught our attention. Couple of things, though, before we jump in. We want to acknowledge that for the last half hour, we've been poor Sarah has been dealing with some technical issues. And so she's actually recording from her phone because the show must go on. So if there are any weird audio issues, we know our amazing sound editors are going to do their best, but we wanted to move on with the recording.
Sarah needs a new laptop is really what it is.
Sarah needs a new laptop. All right. Well, before we jump in, Sarah, how are your holidays?
Oh, they were great. I don't really celebrate anything, but I did have 2 weeks off from work. I work at a university, and the university kind of was closed and on winter break. So I got to go out to LA and see my mom and my brother. One of my brothers met me out there, and I have a cousin. So we all just kind of hung out and, did California things. So I love it out in California. I'm based in Chicago. So it was really nice to get a little bit of sunshine.
Nice.
What about you? What about you, Jess? Were you just at home or?
So it's so funny when we jumped on, Sarah was like, "So how are you?" And I just looked frazzled and exhausted because, yes, it's been a glorious 2 weeks of that holiday frenzy, which I actually really love. And in my household, we celebrate everything. I grew up celebrating Hanukkah. My husband celebrates Christmas. Now we celebrate it all. It's also my son's birthday in December. My mom came to visit. We have a friend visiting us from Argentina. And but what I said is that, when your kids are home from school for 2 weeks, it's really not so much a holiday break. Well, it is a holiday break, but it's not a break.
It's not a break, yeah.
So it's been chaos. And all the other schools, or a lot of other schools, went back. So we're recording this on Sunday, January 5th. A lot of the kids went back on Thursday. My kids don't go back till Tuesday. So it's let's prolong this. Oh, and also big news, I got a puppy. So for those counting, that's 5 dogs, two cats, 2 kids, a husband, a partridge in a pear tree. So it's pure and total chaos in my household right now, but I love that.
Specified a nickel for every time you made that partridge in a pear tree joke.
You'd have a lot.
I would be able to afford a new laptop.
There you go. All right. So the other thing that Sarah said is that, so we each picked 3 articles, but we also acknowledge that we're both kind of chatty. So we're going to do our best to get through 6.
We have a lot to say about a lot of things.
But I'm confident. I think, so what we're going to do is we'll do a high-level overview, just really talk through, the main takeaways of the articles that we chose. And then we were saying there are a couple of these that would be perfect for in-depth full episodes. So we'll be back. We will be back for deep dives on at least a couple of these.
And if not full episodes, definitely Substack newsletters, which we have a Substack, by the way, for those who are listening and want to learn anything a little more in depth and want to read instead of listen.
Yeah, and definitely check that out, the unbiasedscipod.substack.com. We'll link to it in show notes. But all right, Sarah, let's jump in.
Let's dive in.
Let's just dive in. All right, what's your first article?
Okay, I'm going to start with one that I got from Scientific American.
Scientific American,
excuse me. Good start, Sarah.
Good start. Strong start.
Yes. Scientific American. Okay. And the title of this article is Why People Get More Colds in the Winter. And this is sort of the eternal question, right? It's definitely, colds have seasonality, right? It's 100% the case. And people know this anecdotally. And there's also epidemiological data to support that more people do get sick in the wintertime. And, why is that, right? And there are a couple of different levels to look at this, right? So you can actually look at it from the molecular biological level, and you can look at it more from the public health side of things. So starting with the micro level, when we're thinking about colds, we're thinking mostly about viral infections. And what happens with viral infections, and specifically rhinovirus, which is the virus that causes the common cold, and a little bit with influenza and COVID-19, is that these viral particles actually remain infectious longer, and they replicate faster in colder temperatures and at lower humidity levels. So it's interesting because the dry air that's caused by most indoor heating systems, it causes the water droplets that are found in the respiratory droplets. That's how viruses are transmitted, like with a cough or a sneeze. Those are called respiratory droplets, and the water in them will evaporate more quickly in lower humidity. And these lead to smaller particles that are capable of actually lasting longer and traveling farther after a cough or a sneeze than it does during more humid months, such as those during the summer. So that's kind of what's happening at the micro level. And then if we look more at the macro level, at the person-to-person contact, and this sort of makes sense if you think about it, just, what are people doing during the winter months? What did we just spend 2 weeks doing? Gathering, right? Traveling, spending time indoors because it's very cold outside. This is, we're in contact with more people in the winter and in closer contact. And that's going to make germs more likely to spread, which makes sense because, in the summer, people are outdoors, they're spread out more. And so there's less of a chance for these viral infections to spread out in the population.
Yep. We are gathered. We are merry. We are on top of each other,
Yeah, exactly. And it's good. These are good things. I mean, it's actually very healthy to have contact, and social connections are really important for our overall health and well-being too. This isn't to say that, we should stop gathering during the winter months and that's not to say that at all. It's just this is kind of what's happening. Yeah. At the biological level.
And so we always say, a good rule of thumb is, ventilation is always a great, obviously if it's not absolutely freezing and if you're able to do it, like cracking a window, just being mindful of things. If you're not feeling well, certainly you should stay home and skip out on the gathering, even though that stinks. Things like washing hands. We're going to come back to that in just a sec. But Sarah, as you were talking, I think, what's that, that people say, bundle up, you'll catch your death of a cold. There's an idea almost like that it's the cold itself that can make people sick. Not the case, right? You still need to be exposed to a pathogen to get sick. So just wanted to clear up.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny. Yeah, being cold is not why you get a cold. So that's common misconception.
All right.
But, still bundle up because it's not comfortable to be cold.
No. Although I would rather be cold than hot. I will say that. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm one of those people.
No, I agree, because you just put on a sweatshirt or a blanket, and you can escape. You can escape the cold a little bit easier than you can escape blistering heat.
And I just get angry and mean when I'm hot. I don't know. All right. Anything else about this article? We'll link to it, of course, in our show notes.
Yeah. We'll link to all these in our show notes. Okay. No, let's. I think you pulled you pulled an article too that was also about a different kind of pathogen.
I sure did. Norovirus. So I picked this article. Honestly, this has been covered by a bunch of different outlets, but the article that I read was published by NPR. The title is Norovirus Outbreaks Are on the Rise Around the Country and on Cruise Ships. Okay, first things first, I just want to say this is why my husband is he refuses to go on cruise ships. Remember, he's an ER doc. He just sees them as little petri dishes. And this article
God, I don't blame him.
This article did not help. So I'm just going to go through summary. So in addition to cruise ships, we're seeing surges of norovirus cases all over the country. If you don't know, norovirus is a highly contagious gastrointestinal virus that makes us basically pee out of our butts and vomit. So I always think of it as like, I picture, sorry, you're vomiting, it's coming out of both ends. All right. It's coming out everywhere. You're miserable. I laugh about this now because I don't have norovirus at this moment, but I will say I have had norovirus. It is hell. It is so terrifying because it's so, you're just miserable for a couple of days. It runs through your household because it's highly, highly contagious. It spreads through contaminated food and water, surfaces, and direct contact. It's really, really resilient. So it can live on surfaces for days or sometimes weeks. Sarah, to your point, what we just covered in the last article, it is more common in winter months. We speculate it's because we're all, again, gathering on top of each other. It causes approximately 2,500 outbreaks annually in the U.S. and about 500,000 ER visits yearly, mostly in young kids. Yeah, it's rough. So right now we're seeing a major surge. There are currently, I believe this was the last week in December, there were 91 suspected or confirmed outbreaks. Oh, that was early December 2024, which is higher than any comparable period since data collection began in 2012 for norovirus. And the test positivity rate reached over 20% in late December, which is the highest since 2018. So basically, this is everywhere right now. Wanted to touch on a couple of things, and I promise I'm not going to ramble on too much, but this is important. Hand sanitizers are not very effective at all against norovirus. And I mean, this is much more Sarah territory than Jess territory. But do you say non-enveloped or enveloped? Non-enveloped? I don't know. Whatever it is, it's a certain type of virus that's resistant to alcohol, which means that regular alcohol-based hand sanitizers are basically ineffective. So the thing that works is washing your hands with soap and water. You don't need to worry about the temperature of the water. You don't need to worry about soap being antibacterial. It does not need to say antibacterial. It's still going to work, via the mechanism, but also the, what's the word I'm looking for? How soaps work. Oh my goodness. There's a word that, of course, at this moment escapes me that I think Sarah might be looking up right now. Nope. How does soap? It's soap. It's not just. How does it work to kill the virus? There's a word.
Well, it's a detergent base.
That's the word.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what are you trying to say? Sometimes I speak Jess very fluently, and we haven't spoken for a couple of weeks, so I'm a little rusty.
You're rusty.
Use it or lose it.
You're rusty and Jess, and that was really embarrassing. I was just rambling there, just thinking you were helping me, but we got there. We got there eventually. So it's the detergent.
What I was going to say is, I was just going to say a couple of words about what we're talking about when we mean a viral envelope. Much like an actual envelope, when you think about that it contains a letter, a viral envelope is just what the outer coating of the viral particle itself. So when we say a non-enveloped virus, it just means that that part is not there. And hand sanitizers are more effective against enveloped viruses than they are against non-enveloped viruses, which is the norovirus. So that's kind of what we're talking about.
Love it. Love it. Love it. There. If norovirus rips through your household, you got to stay home 2 days after your symptoms clear up. This thing, you are shedding that virus even after you feel better. Please, this is not the gift. Well, I guess it is the gift that keeps on giving, right? But please don't bring this. Don't send your kids into school, please, immediately after they stop vomiting and having diarrhea. Just wait a couple of days, please.
Right. And then cruise ships are especially tricky too, because you can't go anywhere, right? It's sort of a self-contained little island
nightmare
of people that
house of horrors,
can't spread out. So that's kind of why cruise ships are such a hotbed for norovirus, or can be.
Yes. If it's in your household, you got to, once everyone's feeling better, this is one of those things, we all know, right? You got to do those sheets. You got to clean everything. This is not the time for your all natural cleaners. You got to whip out the bleach to really wipe out norovirus. Again, this is a good time of year to really emphasize washing your hands, certainly before eating and all that good stuff. So yeah, this is my nightmare. Norovirus is on the rise. I'm sure there are people listening to this who are like, yes, I just dealt with this. It was horrible. So yeah, terrible. All right. Sarah, next article.
All right. This one I found in the Associated Press. AP News is one of my favorite news outlets. I actually don't pay for a lot of news subscriptions, so I really appreciate that Associated Press is free for everyone. This next article is entitled, "An Alabama Woman is Doing Well After the Latest Experimental Pig Kidney Transplant." So this was actually published in the middle of December, and as of now, she's still doing well. I just double checked, and so this woman, her name is Tawana Looney, and she's the 5th American to receive a gene-edited pig organ. And notably, she did not develop any of the complications that previous xenotransplant recipients received. The reason for this is that the organ that she received was actually edited, was a gene edited organ. So basically what that means was the pig that they got the kidney from, through some molecular biological magic that we won't necessarily go into right now just because of time, they were able to edit the genes that make up that were present in the pig and the pig organ to make them more compatible with the genes of humans. So this is really important when we're talking about organ transplantation, because so what happens with organ transplantation sometimes is you need it to be compatible. Otherwise, your body's immune system will reject the organ, which makes sense because the point of the immune system is to kind of alert the body that something foreign is present. And when we're talking about an organ that isn't present from birth in you, that's a foreign object. So you need it to be as compatible as possible. So what's cool about xenotransplantation is the word for it. And it just what this is it involves transplanting organs, tissues, or cells from one species to another, usually from animals, primarily pigs, into humans. So this article was just talking about a woman who received a pig kidney, but theoretically this could happen. You could do this with other organs as well. And there's a bit of controversy about this, right, with ethical concerns related to animal welfare and disease risks. But I think what's important to highlight with something like this is the growing shortage of human organs that are available for transplantation. And this has sort of driven the research field of xenotransplantation. And just to give a kind of alarming statistic, currently over 100,000 people are on the organ transplant waiting list in the United States, and 17 people die each year waiting for an organ transplant.
Wow.
So it's there's a real need for this type of research. And
absolutely. I get goosebumps when I hear about stuff like this. I mean, science is incredible. Can we just this is what we're doing? We're gene editing so that we can use these organs and transplant them into humans. I mean, that's absolutely mind-blowing.
I know. It's one of the things that I love the most about what I do is that if I were to try and explain my research that I do in the lab right now to a scientist, even 50 years ago, they would think I was crazy. They would think what I was doing in my lab was science fiction.
Right.
And this sounds like science fiction, but it's really this is the future.
Oh my gosh. It's so, can you just, I don't know, did you ever think long after we're gone, all the things that are going to happen? It's just so crazy to think about.
I always say that I want to go into cryo hibernation for 100 years and then come back and continue my research 100 years from now with the biotechnology that's going to be available then, because I just will be able to go so much deeper with my questions in the lab in answering them.
is this woman now considered a GMO?
A good question.
I mean, I'm joking somewhat. I mean, so. Right? Technically. All right. Anything else, Sarah, or shall I jump into my next article?
Yeah, I mean, we maybe we'll do I would like to do a deeper dive onto xenotransplantation.
Absolutely.
Because they have been doing, clinical trials on, using different organs. And I mean, it's a relatively new field. Especially considering that now we can incorporate that genetic engineering aspect. We're able to genetically modify the donor animals to make them to make the organs more compatible with humans. So now that we're able to do that, it kind of opens all these new doors. And the FDA has been really good about granting some leeway with this type of research because, like I said, 17 people are dying every day because they can't get an organ.
Right.
If this is their last chance, then...
And this is maybe a good reminder. We'll drop the link, your instructions on how to do this in our show notes, but sign up to be an organ donor. I know that's not something that any of us really want to think about, but it's important to do because here in the U.S., and this is something that we could certainly talk about, but we have an opt-in system, whereas some countries have an opt-out system, right, for organ donation. So opt in.
Yeah.
All right. So this next article, well, I should preface this by saying that this topic is being covered by so many different outlets. And depending on the outlet, the fear and panic factor is completely different. So I chose one that is much more balanced. So this particular headline is, what is HMPV? China steps up emergency measures amid new virus outbreak. And this comes from Independent. Again, we'll link to this in show notes. Now, I chose this article because I must have received 100 messages yesterday alone on what's going on in China, because there are some outlets reporting unverified photos, very scary photos of hospitals being completely overrun with people, in particular children, and basically saying, like, this is 5 years almost exactly since SARS-CoV-2 hit the scene. We first heard about COVID-19. And so people are panicking, like, is this another COVID-19? So let's calm down a sec. First, again, I just want to reiterate, a lot of those photos, a lot of those reports are unverified. So we don't know exactly what's going on. But yes, China is experiencing a surge in respiratory infections. And there's one in particular, HMPV, which is human metapneumovirus. It's primarily affecting northern Chinese provinces. Hospitals are reportedly overcrowded, as I said, particularly kids. And again, the timing is really notable. It comes exactly 5 years after the initial COVID-19 outbreak. But HMPV is not new. It's a different situation than COVID-19, which was this, SARS-CoV-2, which was a novel virus, right? But HMPV was first identified in 2001. It is a respiratory virus causing colds and flu-like symptoms. Common symptoms, sort of the usual suspects: cough, fever, nasal congestion, and fatigue. The incubation period is about 3 to 6 days. The big thing for this is that there is no specific vaccine or antiviral treatments at this time. And so right now, treatment really focuses on managing symptoms. As with most illnesses, there are 3 groups that are at highest risk. These include infants and very young children, the elderly, and people with weakened immune systems. And it can lead to pneumonia in these vulnerable populations. Now, in terms of the response, so the official response, some people think that Chinese authorities might be downplaying the outbreak as a normal seasonal occurrence. The foreign ministry spokesperson states that infections are actually less severe than previous years. China has launched a pilot program, and I couldn't find too many details about this, but specifically it's a surveillance program that will be used to track pneumonia of unknown origin, and enhanced monitoring systems are being implemented. At this time, the WHO has not declared it a global health emergency. Neighboring countries are monitoring this. So Hong Kong has reported some cases. Cambodia and Taiwan are on alert. And India's health officials state that there's no need for panic. Last thing I'll say is that China maintains that it's safe to travel in the country and that the government is prioritizing the health of both citizens and visitors. Again, I mean, I don't, at this time, I'm not panicking. We're monitoring. A little bit hard to know what's going on. Like some people are not sure, is it being reported accurately? So it's something that we're watching, but we're not panicking.
I will say too, like it does make sense why people are scared too. I mean, especially considering, what happened, like 4 years ago. I'm just from a, sort of an empathetic place. Like I see
Absolutely.
why people are scared. Like it's a new virus or it's not a new virus, but I mean,
Right.
they're hearing about this virus that's, emerging from China and, they're worried that it's, we're going to have another COVID-19 on our hands.
100%. No, I get it. I totally get it.
It does make sense. But what's important to keep in mind is when, and this is kind of a good rule of thumb when you're reading the news in general, is just to sort of take a step back and say like, well, what does the data actually say?
Right. Right. I mean, I guess in this case, it's slightly hairier that some people don't necessarily, I hate to, trust the data that's coming out. So it's one of these, again, we're monitoring, we'll see what's going on, not to downplay concern. I don't use this term lightly. I think many of us really do have PTSD following the pandemic. So to your point, totally understand why people are panicked, but at this
it was like
time,
such an unprecedented occurrence. Like we definitely weren't prepared for it, I'll say. And
I don't know that we're better prepared now, but that's a story for another day. All right. I could ramble about this. So Sarah, let's move on. Is this your last article?
Yeah, this is my last article.
All right.
So this article was published on the very first day of 2025. And it's entitled Psychedelic Therapy Begins in Colorado, Causing Tension Between Conservatives and Veterans. And this was also published in Associated Press. And essentially, Colorado has become the second state to legalize psychedelic therapy as of 2025. And there is a sort of clash playing out in Colorado Springs, which is a relatively conservative area of Colorado, where conservative leaders are restricting treatments over objections from veterans, which is a population that is very impacted by post-traumatic stress disorder. And psychedelic therapy has been touted as a potential treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. So there are a lot of veterans and veterans' rights activists who are promoting psychedelic therapy and the legalization of psychedelic therapy for use in this vulnerable population. And like I said, Colorado is the second state to legalize this. The first one was Oregon. And the residents of Colorado voted to legalize therapeutic use of psychedelics, specifically psilocybin, which is the psychoactive, bioactive ingredient in magic mushrooms.
Shrooms,
yes, exactly. Shroom, magic mushroom, shroom. Psilocybin is like the name of the actual name of the thing that's gonna make you hallucinate and other things. So, as of 2025, companies in Colorado are now able to apply for licenses to administer the drug. Research has shown some promise in psychedelic drugs, the use of psychedelic drugs for helping with conditions such as PTSD, which, as I mentioned, is very prevalent in veteran populations. And but the thing is that, and why I think that only 2 states in the union have thus far legalized the use of psychedelic therapy, is the scientific field is really in the relatively early stages of this type of research. And there are still some risks associated with usage, and there are still a number of clinical trials that are underway. I think that from a neurobiological standpoint, the reason why these drugs are so tricky is because everyone's brains are structured extremely differently. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have the same basic anatomy, right? Everyone has a prefrontal cortex, everyone has an amygdala, like all of these things. But the neurochemical makeup of all of our brains are extremely different. So with something like psilocybin that has such varied effects on one's psyche, it's really hard to standardize and know exactly how the drug is going to impact different people. And we think the neurobiological mechanisms of psilocybin use are still a little bit like under examination, but we think that it works through activating serotonin receptors. And it might also increase brain connectivity between certain networks. But like I said, the research is really in its early stages. And I think that this would be another topic that we could do a deep dive on. Because it's a really interesting topic. It's very controversial. If you ask two different scientists about the use of psychedelic therapy in treating conditions such as PTSD and other conditions, you will get very different opinions.
Right.
So I think, this is definitely one worth examining further.
I would love to do a deep dive on this. And I just think so my brain goes to, and these are very different things and they're being touted to treat different things, but medical marijuana and THC, even that, not to say even, but that is so controversial and has not been palatable for a lot of folks. I feel like this is even more, controversial.
Oh yeah, because what we know about marijuana and THC and the way that affects the brain is we know so much more about that than we do about psilocybin and the effects of psilocybin on the human brain. It's so much easier to know exactly how marijuana is going to affect someone. And even with marijuana, like the THC, there's a lot of there's some amount of variability, but not nearly as much variability as you have with something like psilocybin. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to close us out with the final article, which comes to us from the New York Times. This was published by every outlet, but the title is Surgeon General Calls for Cancer Warnings on Alcohol. And let me preface this by saying that as I started speaking, I realized the irony that I'm wearing my husband's hoodie, which is from his favorite local brewery. But all right, what's going on here? So the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, is calling for cancer warnings on all alcoholic beverages, similar to cigarette warnings. Now, I don't know. This did not come, it should not come as a surprise to people that, alcohol is a carcinogen. It is a known carcinogen. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. But it does not seem to care. I don't know. It doesn't seem like people really understand that. I mean, because so many of us do partake in, social drinking, but well, anyway, let me stop talking. Let me get into the nitty gritty a little bit. So some stats: alcohol contributes to approximately 100,000 cancer cases and 20,000 deaths annually in the U.S. These are some of the statistics that he cited to bolster the case for these warning labels. And so he feels that this is particularly significant now since the U.S. dietary guidelines are due for an update. So in terms of cancer risk, alcohol is linked to at least 7 types of cancer, including breast and colon cancer, and even moderate drinking within recommended limits may increase cancer risk. For women, breast cancer risk increases from 11.3%, which corresponds to less than 1 drink per week, to 13.1% for 1 drink per day. So 11.3 to 13.1%. For men, alcohol-related cancer risk rises from 10% to 11.4%. Few other things. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies alcohol as a group 1 carcinogen. This is the highest risk group due to its addictive, toxic, and psychoactive properties. The National Toxicology Program's 15th report on carcinogens lists consumption of alcohol beverages as a carcinogen, even suggesting that those who drink even 1 drink a day have a higher risk of developing an alcohol-related cancer. We'll link to some stuff. We've done content on this and posts on this on some of the guidelines for alcohol consumption. They vary by country, but the WHO's official statement is that there's actually no safe amount of alcohol consumption that does not negatively affect health. So the general consensus, I mean, if you're viewing it from a scientific perspective, is to avoid alcohol entirely. But some people feel like that's just unrealistic, and so it's a matter of assessing risk, how we personally assess risk. But the U.S. Surgeon General feels strongly that that alcoholic beverages should contain this warning so that people are making this informed decision.
Yeah. And it's tricky too, because alcohol and alcohol consumption is so deeply ingrained in the social fabric of our society. So it's, when you have something that's, so sort of like a social practice that's, so integral, especially for younger people, it's not necessarily always as simple as just like complete elimination.
Right. I'm happy that you said that. Just a couple of other things that I wanted to touch on before we wrap up here. So yes, this U.S. Surgeon General is recommending this, but only Congress can mandate new warning labels. So this does not mean that we're actually going to see these labels. It's to be determined. But current labels, which have been unchanged since 1988, only warn about pregnancy and operating machinery. So there's no, information about cancer risk or other health risks. Public awareness is low. Fewer than half of Americans know that alcohol is a cancer risk. And alcohol is considered the third leading preventable cause of cancer after tobacco and obesity. Just a couple of other things. So 47 nations actually do require warnings in alcoholic beverages. Only South Korea currently requires cancer warnings specifically, although Ireland plans to add cancer warnings in 2026. And then just from a scientific perspective, and again, I think Sarah and I were saying like this requires a full deep dive for sure. Mm-hmm. But how does alcohol affect our health? In a few different ways, or several different ways, I should say. It breaks down in the body. What does it break down into? Acetaldehyde, am I saying that correctly? Which can damage DNA. It increases inflammation and oxidative stress. It can alter hormone levels, particularly estrogen, and it can make it easier for other carcinogens to be absorbed. And the final thing I will note is that a lot of people, I hear a lot of people say, a glass of red wine a day has antioxidants. It could actually be good for us. And I've heard people tout cardiovascular benefits of moderate drinking. The large majority of that research has actually been disproven. And the benefits of alcohol, not a whole lot of evidence, if any, supporting that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's I don't know. Yeah. There's pretty much no health benefits to alcohol consumption.
Aside from, for some people, that's social, emotional, but in terms of like physiology, I don't think I haven't seen anything compelling. No strong evidence for that.
Yeah, and as far as the effects on the brain, I think we should definitely do an episode on this.
Yeah,
too. It's very, very, very interesting how alcohol affects the brain. I mean, it does nothing good though, just to wet your whistle. There, like
you worked in wet your whistle. We love that. We love it. All right, well, Sarah, I will say I love recording with you solo. These episodes are really fun, and I kind of like this, a more lighthearted, like contemporary episode where we're kind of breaking down some hot headlines and science news.
Yeah,
so this was
reading
fun.
The science and health news with Sarah and Jess.
Oh, good. By the way, this is her way of needling me, because I did a few like YouTube videos where I would sit in my fuzzy robe and drink my coffee and like read the science news with Jess. I only did it a couple of times, but maybe we're gonna bring that back.
It was amazing.
We're gonna resuscitate it.
So good.
Yeah. All right, Sarah. Well, you want to bring us home?
Absolutely. All right. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you learned a thing or two. Please join us next week on your trusted source for no nonsense, just science.